Okay, so the plan this morning is to, the plan each week is to cover a couple of topics that are pre-agreed, and we'll take feedback, input on anything that you'd like to see covered. But I think to start, the four of us talked over areas which we feel don't get talked about enough. And the first question that we looked at was aerobic swimming, in terms of why we do it, how we implement it into the program, and program specifics in terms of what you use it for, how it works, maybe the difference in age group athletes to senior athletes, all those sorts of questions. So we've been given a bit of a heads up on the topic, so we've had a little bit of time to think. I know Lawrence has prepared a little bit of something for us. So yeah, Lawrence is going to go first. So he's going to share some. I'm just going to make Lawrence host.
I can still share now, anyway.
Oh, can you do that now? Can you?
I think so. I'll give it a try. Oh no, I can't. You'll have to make me host.
Okay, no problem. Make host.
Oh, Lawrence has made me proper conscious now about this.
Do you know what? Mine's actually mine's really basic, and will probably be a good platform for everyone else to continue off the back of. It's not in much detail. So I'm going to share screen because I've got a spreadsheet. So first of all, aerobic swimming, the background of any program. In my programs, I use aerobic swimming for 4 reasons. First one is putting skills under stress. Second one is building a foundation of fitness. Third one, we just need to admit, I think that's one of yours, Drew Siller, is it? Just need to admit it to the... So yeah, second one is building a foundation of fitness. Third one is manipulating weekly distance. I find that one's only really apparent to youth swimming. And I'll go into that in a second. And then the fourth reason is recovery. The reason that I don't use aerobic swimming to manipulate distance with age group swimming is because I tend to keep the weekly distances the same from one week to the next. Even in approach to competition, I don't taper age group swimmers. Now, we kind of build up to a distance that I'm comfortable with at the beginning of the season, and then we live there for the rest of the season. We kind of stick at that point. And aerobic swimming for me is anywhere between 50 to 60 beats below max heart rate. I try to introduce that as early as possible. So even on a very basic level, I try to get the act of taking heart rate as early as 9 and 10, just getting, even if it's not correct, even if they're not taking the heart rate correctly, just the idea, the process of taking a heart rate after coming into the wall. So I've just done, the reason I've done a breakdown here then is just to show where it would fit in. And I've really not gone into a huge amount of detail, but I've got kind of two week session structures of how aerobic swimming would fit in. So on here, I've got Monday PM. You can see over distance, pull and kick. I like to start the week with an aerobic session, kind of just to flush out the weekend. And obviously, if you look at the end of the week, we do a key set on Sunday morning. Our week's slightly different. We don't have any Saturday pool time. So historically, if I've had a Saturday morning session, my third key set of the week would be on a Saturday. I would then have a Sunday off. So I always like to start the week with aerobic kick and pull on a Monday just to get things started again. I don't like to waste a key session on a Monday night if they've had, perhaps, especially with older swimmers, I don't know, they may have been off doing all sorts over the weekend. I like to get my first session of the week as an aerobic session. And that first key session of the week is going to be on a Tuesday night. My Tuesday and Thursday mornings are both skill development sessions. So it's working skill work, drills. I've got a list of about 50 or 60 drills that I'll work with over the course of the season. They're done as individual 25s to begin with, and they're built into a small set. Again, it's all 50 to 60 beats below max. Wednesday evening is aerobic medley, and the Friday PM I do a form select. So I write 3 workouts: a backstroke, a breaststroke, and a butterfly workout, and they decide which one they want to do. And that workout, for example, is 3,000 meters aerobic swimming, some skill work put in there. I think it's worth mentioning, and this is the last bit from me. I'll just quickly show this. So that's kind of a little bit further into the season. I introduce a full speed session on a Wednesday evening. So that Wednesday night aerobic session comes out, and I put a speed session in here on a Wednesday. So that's why that changes. I do that at certain points in the season, but to be honest, the structure is still fairly similar. It's worth mentioning that I'm at my busiest on pull side when I'm running aerobic workouts. I think that's really important. I am running up and down pull side, trying to engage with as many kids as I possibly can, trying to give feedback on technique, stopping kids if they're not doing underwater kicks off the wall. Over the years, perhaps when I was maybe a little bit more naive and a younger coach, I thought aerobic swimming, right, the set on the board, the kids get on with it. But as I've got a little bit older, it's really important for me to be switched on during those aerobic sessions, because if I'm switched on, the kids will be engaged. You know, when you're doing a key set, a race pace set, a speed set, for example, the engagement comes from the fact that they're interested in the times they're swimming. So if it's a speed set, they're really interested in knowing what time they're swimming. They're engaged because they want to do a good job of the set. When it's, I don't know, 3100s as an aerobic set, I don't know, pull on a Monday evening, it's really important that I'm switched on and engaged, because you know what it's like, 12:15 into that, kids can quite easily switch off. So that's all from me. I hope that's kind of set things up for the other guys to go into some details about what they do.
Yeah, Lawrence, I've got a couple of questions. How long are your sessions?
A mixed bag, really. So our 2 morning sessions are an hour and a half. The rest of our evening sessions are anywhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours.
Right.
And
in terms of volume per, let's say, over an hour and a half session, what are you typically covering?
So we, I wouldn't say that I was obsessed with volume. I track volume purely so that I can gauge where my taper should come in with senior swimmers. So the only reason I'm taking note of weekly volume is so that when we come into the meet, I can work out, well, over the last 12 weeks, we've averaged, I don't know, 37,000 meters. So my taper needs to be less than that. That's the only reason I'm tracking volume. An average weekly session is probably 5K. We don't really. Monday night, we would maybe go a little bit higher than that, the aerobic pull and kick, because it's a 2-hour session. But then we've also got a speed session on a Wednesday night where we're probably 2.5 to 3K. So we probably average out about 5K per session with seniors.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I missed, I managed to get thrown out of the very, very beginning, so I apologise if you've already said this. But your groups of swimmers, are they all roughly the same ability?
So I'd say all of the 14 and unders would be county qualifiers and above, and all of the 14 and overs would be regional qualifiers and above.
Yeah, so you haven't got a mix, you're not trying to handle a mixture of, you know, some of our, as Lee will say, some of our sessions are very specific groups, and some of them can be quite a wide range of, you know, you might have a 9-year-old in with a 22-year-old, not clearly in the same lane, but you know what I mean. So I was just trying to work out how that would. So
as much as all the seniors are regional qualifiers, there can still be a wide range. So our senior boy, our oldest senior boy is 19. Who will probably swim a quicker time for 100 backstroke than the slowest girls that are 14 and have just scraped a regional qualifying time. So there is quite a big range. I get round that through just having multiple different turnaround times, slightly adjusting the sets for the younger girls in the group. We've got a lane on the end that's got two 13 going on 14 boys and 3 14-year-old girls. So they're probably doing 75% of the main set that the
Right.
senior boys and girls are doing. But yeah, I kind of, when I write the session on the board, I'll say this is the main session, and then I'll put a little note at the bottom that says lane 4, this is how we are going to do it. Lane 5, this is how we are going to do it. Lane 6, this is how we are going to do it.
Right, okay. Thank you.
No worries.
Lads, who wants to go next? Adam? No?
I'll chip in. Just off the back of that, really. Very, very similarly, you know, obviously the aerobic zone between 60 and maybe up to kind of 40% bit below max, 40 beats below max. And obviously working A1, A2, A3. So just to go off like kind of Lawrence's weekly workout with his different kind of key sets. So for me, after a key set, I'd want them to be not going into a high, you know, a higher kind of, you know, heart rate zone, aerobic zone. I'd want it to be kind of a lower level towards 60%, you know, directly after a set, because I don't want to force it too much too soon after that. I want to allow them to recover regardless of their age. I would always, again with aerobic training, generally work girls a little bit harder, more volume, probably a little bit higher in the heart rate zones, you know, upwards towards that kind of threshold level. Yeah, I value the aerobic kind of energy system as vital, because it sets the platform for everything that we do, whether it be skill development, whether it be the faster work that we do. So, I mean, I'm no scientist, and I'll probably use a few words that I don't really understand too much myself, but I've been on a call with Swim England and British Swimming, and they talk about the aerobic capacity has to be functional. It has to be functional and in place in order for you to go and work in the lactate, you know, production, removal, and tolerance levels. Because if you don't have the capillarization and you don't have the buffering capacities from the mitochondrial density, then it won't allow you to remove the lactate and convert that back into kind of ATP ready for your use in your aerobic zone. So I don't know too much. Again, the scientists are out there, but that effectively sets you up for what you want to be doing with your kind of early or late age groupers and early youth and kind of senior swimmers working with those faster zones. So again, Lauren spoke about kind of speed sets, and I know we're not talking about that, but in order for those to be effective, you have to have a base in place in order for you to, you know, work effectively in those zones. So, I mean, again, a bit about, I've come from a predominantly age group program in Salford, where I think we had 14 national qualifiers in my group, ranging between, I think, 15 and 12 last season, the last full season that we had. And then the rest were made up with regional qualifiers and 1 county swimmer. And again, similar to Lawrence, we had a county swimmer who was 19, but he was great for the 12 and 13-year-old girls. Demographically, it's not great, but there was a quite a wide spread, 19 and 18-year-old, and very similarly, you kind of position them in key sets depending on where they're able to fit in and supplement their own training, but also with the group that you're in. So from an aerobic perspective, I would always, with those, regardless of their age groups, I would always do a freestyle set every week. I'd always do an IM or a backstroke freestyle mix, depending on where I felt I could engage them, you know, as much as possible. And the third one would be a number 1 aerobic set. Now, some weeks I'd just take an example. I coached a lad he won the last nationals that we had. He won the 200 fly at 14, and he won the open water. So for argument's sake, on the fly, I would have him doing, for argument's sake, 60-50s, and we build up to that over the season. 60-50s fly. So 1 week he'd do 60-50s fly, and it'd be mixed up with drills and skills. Sometimes it'd be all swimming. Again, as we progress through the season, it'll be predominantly all technique and efficiency work. And off a minute, just really easy, holding 8 strokes per length, you know, maintaining skills and kick counts. But the week after, because for me that was an easy aerobic set, kind of what probably A1, A2 kind of level for him on fly, I would then put him in with the backstroke girls who were maybe repping 135 base, you know, so I'd then put him into a set that would challenge him, and I'd kind of alternate that because I was conscious of just ramming him too hard too soon. and just trying to go faster, where the breakdown of the skills will probably happen. So I would kind of judge that freestyle girl who was 27 low for 53 long course. I would put her, she was just like an anaerobic animal, but she needed to do that base layer of aerobic conditioning. So I would put her in with the backstrokers. So I think it's important to kind of just look at what athletes you've got in the water as well, because it's really important for them to be positioned in the same route. You know, so if Joe and some of the other guys that I had were probably doing 4100s off 115 or descending to 115, this girl would be working way too hard, and she wouldn't actually be working in the aerobic zone. So again, I kind of rambled on a little bit, but I think the point is just look at what you've got and then kind of trying to deliver that in the space and the time that you've got available to you.
I don't think you're rambling at all, Adam. I think that's really useful. And like you say, the different athletes, I certainly, you know, find yourself, we have all ranges. We're very much kind of sprint focused, but then we've got a couple of triathletes to come in and work with us, and it's tapped in the group. Do you know what I mean? When we run sprints and then swim down, the tri guys, our swim down is their main set, and you know, you work it in however you need to. I think that's brilliant. But no, that's ASADS. What about you, Noel? What thoughts have you got on aerobic work?
I thought I'd just share this. Can I share the screen? Do a little thing, because I thought mainly I look from like, so when I was at Trafford, I worked with a lot of age groupers, and then I moved to Burnley, and I had a really good freestyle girl, and I was like, we went like 5-8 aerobic threshold sessions a week, and we fucking pounded her. Like she worked hard, like hard. And then when I moved down to Maxwell, which is in Aylesbury, it completely changed my outlook on aerobic placement in the program. Mainly because I was trying to apply the workload that I was doing with a 17, 18-year-old female with 14, 15-year-olds, but also my outlook and my whole mentality around it. I genuinely do feel it's possibly, I think it's the most important thing I think clubs should be doing. I think a lot of coaches, particularly at sort of like with less hours, spend too much time doing sprint-based work, and then the kids hit that glass ceiling too early because they're not able, they've not got the aerobic capacity, they've not got the cardiovascular capability to then start going through the removal process of lactic when they do it, that sort of key phase. So I feel like they've not been set up physiologically like for further development, because it's just, and I think a lot of that is down to maybe a bit of knowledge or going out seeking that knowledge. But anyway, I'm fucking chatting, aren't I? So for me now, sort of like, if I share what we do, also disabled participant screening.
Oh, yes.
Let me share stuff. God's sake, Lawrence.
Lawrence,
Someone's been in prison.
Let you in to do that.
So my whole outlook now, you're about to all see yourself, is a little bit different. Where I sort of split my program up, and we do work. The way I see it now, I think there's 3 levels of aerobic work, and after that, it's just race pace work. And for me, race pace work, depending on the turnaround time, you get the difference in your obviously training outcomes. Mornings, literally just work kick. I just work sort of like, because I think getting them to kick fast and getting to kick hard, and it's not a very nice, you can sort of get that nice level playing field. We use heart rate monitors, the OH1 polar things. So we can throw them up on the screen on a TV, and they can just see what zone they're in. So there's that constant feedback of where they actually are working for both of us. So, and to Lawrence's point, I think it's important. We only use that for the older ones. We just, the younger ones from the age of like 10, 11 are told to start taking heart rates. I think it's important to go through that process and why they're doing that. But pretty much for me, sort of like, it is just constant sort of like stroke count and skill work. So I think, let's say in the morning, we do a lot of underwater work, and we might do a lot of stroke counting stuff. Depending on where I want them to be, I manipulate the turnaround. So we might be going sort of like 850s, or sorry, not 8, let's say 2050s free, and the aiming to hold feet past the flags, not breathing first stroke, and 12 strokes and under. Dependent on how much I want them pressured to hold them skills would depend on the turnaround times that I'll be setting. So if we are going fairly easy, it'll be like 1:10, 1 minute. As we start to increase, I'm looking for them to start thinking about the process still and have that mindset on the process. We'll start maybe bringing that down a little bit. And sometimes it'll just be make the time. Like, I'm not asked about what time they are making. I feel aerobic as well. I think when you get too hooked up on times, and this is something I used to do a lot when I was a little bit younger, is like, if they weren't going sort of like Katie Reynolds, who I had, if she wasn't going 103s and 100s off 120s, she was not in an aerobic zone. Bullshit. Like, sometimes she had a really tough day at school. Sometimes she just really, she just had no sleep. She just various aspects. She ain't gonna be in them sort of zones, but she will be still in that aerobic aerobic zone that we're looking for, regardless of how she's doing. So from there, pretty much my whole setup is just put the stopwatch down unless it's race pace work, and everything underneath that race pace work is just aerobic work, and I just manipulate what we do dependent. Is that making sense? Sort of like we do a range of kick. So as you can see, sort of like on here, we are doing sort of, and I only do 3-week cycles where every third week we're going to just go racing and just set them up and give them microcycles as such, if that makes sense. And I think that's going to be important. I've changed that as we go into this next cycle from this lockdown, because half the kids have forgotten how to race, not raced for the last 12 months properly, and they've been put in this level X crap. So I want to stick them in an environment where they've got teammates on the pool side. They're going to skin up, not in the worst way. But they're going to get skins on, and we're just going to, even to the point of getting like, just making it fun, get face paint out and just make it fun. Every third Saturday, get them just to race 500s, which will be 100 fly, 100 back, 100 breast, 100 free, 100 IM, and progress that. For me, that's still a set. But yeah, sort of like a lot of it is just transition work, thinking about the underwater, and I just manipulate the turnaround time or the rest period based on the outcome that I'm looking for. If I'm looking for sort of like 140 to 160, I tend to put fins on and go quite long distance sort of work and still get them to focus on. So we might go a set of like 250, like 250 meters of backstroke work with drills and kicking out past a 10 meter, relax, and then work into that process of turning again, because obviously underwater, when you're asking them to kick quite a lot, underwater it's anaerobic. So give them a little bit more time, turnaround time at the end of the rep, just to make sure they're staying in that zone and they're not going a bit too hard. But and again, same with Adam, something I used to do quite a lot when I was at Burnley is we'd do an aerobic set and then I push him even higher and be like, let's do like 1050s max. And let's fucking go. And it's just me. Like, I tend to go full on, and taking a lot of time just to, I say, wheedle that back down again. And that's just because I'm working with swimmers who are 14 to 16 at the moment. 13 to 16. And they're all various ranges. We have kids who are sort of like top end nationals to kids who are trying to just get into counties. And I'm saying trying to get into counties. It ain't a fast county, our county. And we just appropriate the sessions that we do. A lot of them go the same set as such. So we'll have the older ones maybe go sort of, and then just a simple set, let's say 2200s. And we'll just filter that down. The next group might go sort of like do like sort of 18 off a slower time. The group below that might go 15 a slower time, and so on. And it's just running around and just making sure, obviously, eyeballs are on. Something I picked up off Lee and I'm going to take when we go back in is the delay stuff, Joe, from the iPads and linking them up to TVs. So they've got that constant feedback as well. I think that's very important, and I love that sort of stuff. I sound like I'm proper into like all the tech crap, but I'm really not. I don't get it half the time. I don't even know how to use a laptop unless it's for naughty stuff, like writing stuff on for my sessions. But yeah, is that making sense?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I think Lawrence has just, as I also said it, you've not mentioned it in this, but it's written right in front of us. You know, garbage yardage is something that we do need to do volume, but as coaches, I think we need to come alive when it's 3100s or 40, whatever it might be. We need to come alive and make sure that these guys are stimulated, because if they're going to go back and just be lazy and sloppy, then what's the point of doing it? You know, you want to challenge the aerobic zone, but your skill levels need to be like really high, and you need to maintain that in order for them to do, when you do increase the pace, that can they deliver those skills under pressure and for a long time. You know, for me, the guys that win the race, females guys, just a general kind of comment, are the ones that don't slow down the least. Don't slow down the most. You know, it's about maintaining that speed and maintaining that skill level under pressure when fatigue kicks in. You know, and again, I think everything is based upon that aerobic system.
This is the thing, I agree completely with that. And the thing I try and sell to my swimmers is that you maintain maximal speed or near to maximal speed through sheer efficiency on the opening half of your race. If it becomes an energy sapping movement, like you are taking away from the back end of that race. And like Adam says there, sort of like if anybody who does want to watch and watching this weekend, you watch someone like Joe Litchfield kick out to 15 on the back end of a 200. What you're watching kick out last 15, like 215 meters. And that is sheerly down to aerobic capacity and his ability to maintain the speed through efficiency at the beginning. And I feel that's key to what you do, or you're trying to deliver in your aerobic sessions, is maintaining that. And something else I'd probably say I'd try and get through to the kids more now is training smart, not training hard, if that makes sense. Because you get some kids who come in warm-up warriors and then it's like 10 out of 10 on a Joe 3100 set, and you're just like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Like, chill out. I'm looking for you to kick your feet past the flags. I'm looking for you to not breathe on the first stroke. I'm looking for various things which you can only do, I think, early season under less stress. And we just increase the stressors as we go through the season. So then ultimately your final ultimate stressor, and I speak very passionately about this, is a fact. Any ex-swimmers that are on here, like you stand up half naked on a block, dive in the water, and you're being judged by parents, coaches, your own parents, your own mates and swimmers, like, and a time defines you on that board. That defines you as a person. I think that's bullshit. But that is the ultimate stressor. You're expected to do all these things we ask of these kids under them circumstances. I can't think of any other sport that does that. So if that's the final product in the end of the journey, I've got to figure out where the beginning of the journey is. So I've got to get that habit in place early on. And regardless of the cycle of work that we might do or this part of the season, it's just constant reinforcement of the skill base, and then increase the stresses to get the training outcome. And I do talk a lot of crap, so I'm very sorry, guys.
Do you know what, Noel? I think you see that as all. I'm getting off, but you're talking about all they're all relevant areas, they're all relevant points. You can see the rest of the coaches in the room going, oh yeah. And actually, through expanding, that's the beauty of this sort of session, where you'll start off talking about one thing, and then it'll just lead down that path, and that's what I wanted from these sessions to be. Do you know what I mean? But no, that's great. Sorry, has anyone else got any questions for Noel before I put my 2 pence in?
I'll fire away.
Okay, right. I'm going to disagree with the lot of you. And I think anyone who knows me as a coach will know that was coming. In terms of the aerobic swimming, you lot will 100% do more meters in the showers than we do in the pool. We do a lot of very, very specific energy system work. And I have a couple of reasons behind why we do what we do. And I've learned from a lot of very, very good coaches in my time coaching. From, I spent a week with Bill Furness 2 months before Adlington went to the Olympics the first time and won the 2 golds. So I saw that sort of program. I had my influences from my own coach, and I had influences from my first head coach, John, who was Adam was working with at Salford as well. So I've seen a number of different styles of approach to aerobic swimming. One thing I will say is we don't do a lot of aerobic specific main sets. We all swim aerobically, warm-ups, cool downs, recovery work. For me, I don't like swimming slow. I don't see the point. The argument, and it might sound a very crude way of putting it, but would Usain Bolt run a marathon on his off days and still expect to run 9:5 or whatever his world record is? For me, more than, and I'll always remember the conversation I had with John Rudd about Ben Proud, and he said anything more than being fit enough to last the warm up is dulling his speed. Now, that comes down to the fact that I'm working with a lot of mainly fast guys, mainly 50 and 100 seems to be where my group is mainly focusing at the moment. And anyone who knows what I've done as a coach, I've had 200 swimmers, I've had excellent 400 swimmers in previous programs, but European junior guys on the 2, the 4, the 8 and the 15. But in this program specifically, we've evolved to this place where the aerobic stuff is done, warm up, cool down, recovery, thinking about skill. And yet we do give them the opportunity to work on those skill-based things. But realistically, the main work, there's not a session where we don't work hard. Very, very rarely we'll do a session which there isn't some quality in there, be it lactate tolerance, lactate production, basic speed, threshold work. One thing which I've been playing with recently, and as actually the swimmers have really got to grips with and are starting to see a benefit from is, the critical speed calculations, where, I mean, that's a long time ago. That was science. But what we use it for is for finding that pace to use for lactate clearance, for the recovery between this, and actually using, that's probably the only aerobic factor we use, is finding that point just below threshold, just at the point where we can say, right, you need to be swimming at this time. And when you do that test, it surprises you what the times work out at. Do you know what I mean? I've got guys that will hold 61, 62 over reps of hundreds. But then when we do the critical speed test, it comes out and it says they need to be swimming 110, 111. But actually bringing it back down, bringing that pace back down, is allowing them to recover much better. And I think part of it is they're actually swimming too hard. They're still producing waste products. Not waste products to the point that they're absolutely burning after a couple of 50s like a lactate set would be. But you find that actually over significant distances, like 2K set, 3K set, whatever it might be, if they're swimming that bit too hard, it's breaking them down and it's forcing them into a place where actually tomorrow's set's going to be compromised. Now, because we're using this as a level, they're able to go again the next day, and we kind of race them fit. Now, I'm talking about the seniors when I say that. In terms of our younger swimmers, anything they do is aerobic because they're not producing lactate yet. So again, I'll include them on the set that the seniors are doing, because 2050s off 60, let's say, the seniors are swimming 26, 27s. Those littlies are coming in 45, 46 seconds or whatever it might be. We can run that across the whole pool. And people say, well, they're doing the same set as the older ones. I say, yeah, they do the same set. But the energy system they're using is so much different. And actually it brings a sense of team in there, where you've got the littlies doing the same as your seniors. And they'll be looking across the pool, they'll finish their rep, they look over and they'll see our Commonwealth guys or our Nationals guys absolutely bent double, trying not to be sick. and they're watching and they understand that that's what I'm going to be when I'm 15, 16, 17. And I like that idea as well, because I like the fact that it shows them, I let them do the sprint work. They're not producing lactate. It's not doing them any harm. They're not damaging their week. But what they are seeing is, if I do this like that, like those guys over in lane 8, then one day it'll hurt me like that. And when they get there, they've already got a pre-understanding of what that's going to look like. But yeah, like you say, in terms of why we use it to have them fit enough to be able to last the warm-up in competition. You know, that was another really good point John Rudd made when he was talking about Ben Proud. I've got a couple of lads swimming 22 and trying to get down to that 21 mark. And he said any more than is necessary is going to dampen the speed. And, you know, when we're talking about sprint work, that's everything, isn't it? That 100th of a second. So that's something that we talk about. We do now. Having said that, I'm going to backtrack a little bit and say we do a meters week. Normally, somewhere in the middle of the cycle, and that is instead of doing a recovery week. But what it means is, or a deload, we just push the meters up, and it actually works a lot on body composition. They drop the weight. My top lads will say he loses about 4 or 5 kilo during that week, and he drops about 2% body fat, and he loves that because he says after the meters week, as it were, he doesn't understand the science behind it. I'm sorry, that's disrespectful, but I'm not asking him to understand the science behind it. I'm asking him to do what we're doing. We push the meters up. He just gets on with it, and he knows it's just a week of graft. But what that does is having them working aerobically. That's all we use it for. It's dropping the body fat. It keeps enough aerobic capacity in there for them to be able to finish races. But realistically, for me, doing too much can be as dangerous as not doing enough. You know, how that sits in the program. We'd normally, if we were going to do a meters-y type session, it would probably be Monday morning, like I think Lawrence was saying. You know, on a Monday we kind of work them back in, ease them back in. Like you say, Monday morning isn't. I don't get all the squad there, but the ones that do, I'm happy to make it a more skill-based technical session and give them a little bit more easing in before we go into the main body of the work from Monday night. You know, but I mean, I'll if I'd have known you guys were bringing presentations, I'll happily put a kind of a cycle diagram, and I can share that with you next time as to how our cycles break down. But yeah, that's pretty much where we are with it.
As much as you said you disagree, Lee, you know, when you explain it like that, as much as you sound to begin with like you're disagreeing, the concept.
I was joking when I said disagree. No, I'll be honest.
I think you know, the concept of if it's slow, it's not worth it is exactly the same in our programs. We just do it differently. So obviously in your program, that view is within the session. If it's not slow, it's not worth it. My program with the 4 key sessions in the week, I'm looking at it exactly the same. I want those 4 key sessions to be fantastic. I want those 4 key sessions for them to be swimming at their absolute best. If it's a race pace set, I want them to be as fast as they can for the 30-50s. The way I do that is I put 2 recovery sessions, aerobic sessions, in between the previous key set so that one can be better. So yours is within the session, right? You've got something fast in every single session, and the rest of the session is recovering. You know, I know the Usain Bolt example was used. He will do recovery stuff. It just won't be running, and it won't be running because it's weight bearing to run for him. But he will be doing exactly the same as your program in terms of ice baths, massage. You know, his view is I want to be fast every single session, And what I'm going to do in between one session and the next is going to prepare me to be fast every session. What differs between our 4 programs is what we do in between. For me, I like to do 2 aerobic sessions in between each key session, and at one point in the week 1, because I need to make sure that the key session, we're getting as much benefit out of it as we possibly can. And that's the way that I think works best for the event choice, the age group of swimmer. You know, a lot of our swimmers are younger than, I would say, your average swimmer. Yeah. So I think as much as it may sound like it's a completely different approach, the focus is exactly the same.
Do you know what, you're right there, and it's sort of, I think the point is what we do differently between the work. And like you say, one thing I didn't mention is we have a sports institute over there, so for gym work, and we have gym work ourselves through Faye runs a couple of S&C sessions, and they also do a couple of S&C sessions at the sports institute. So whilst they're not, maybe that's why we don't have to try as hard to keep them fit, because in the pool sessions, because they're doing all this other stuff. And one thing I'd say about the Isle of Man, and this is a specific to our area, is sport is massive. Sport is massive over there because there's not right lot else. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing else for them to do. There's like one cinema that's never that gets a new film about 6 months after everyone's already seen it. There's not a right lot else for them to do. So sport is huge. So they do a lot of stuff in school. They do a lot of stuff. You know, a lot of kids are multi-sport athletes until they're 14, 15, and I think that's great because, like you say, it helps everyone. And you know, I've got a lad who's 15. He's 6'5" and about 17 stone. Now he's going away to play rugby. Now his dad will tell you he's only got there because of the start that we give him as a swimmer. And then, do you know what? If you go on to do something else, I'm not gonna never say, oh no, I want to keep hold of that guy. Having the multi-sport approach helps everything. Do any of you guys include triathletes in your system? That's an interesting.
We had Marcus who joined us, national finalist in medley, backstroke, distance freestyle, and he went to European juniors. He went to World Juniors, and they did become a point where his dad wanted to specify or specialize in triathlon. And again, that was something that I wouldn't say dead set against, but I didn't like it. Let's just say I didn't like it. It didn't sit well with me. But as I thought about it logically, it made perfect sense. And I had to kind of grow to like it in the best interest, like I said to you before, looking at the individual that you've got in front of you and how your best can facilitate both aspects. So we came to a compromise of what and when he was resting for his cycling and his running, and when he'd do certain work. And obviously I'd change and adapt his training program depending on the season for the triathlon, and the same for in the pool. And again, he's at Loughborough now. I think he was in first year, and he was the only guy in the first year to be in the top elite squad at Loughborough. So we've got a little bit of experience with that, and we've just got to try and facilitate what we can.
Giles?
I was going to say, so like again, sort of my outlook changed quite a lot. Do you guys remember Beaver?
I do.
Yeah. So fast lad, did next to no training in the actual pool. He turned up 5 times a week, if that. But he did a lot of stuff outside as well, like cycling, running, all that sort of thing. And when he wasn't, if I'm honest with you, at the time when I'm chasing like aerobic sets, I'm like, you've got to be going like 105 Beaver, because otherwise you're just not training hard enough. He was doing what was right for him, and he was staying in that zone. And I think, unbeknown to me, really it was working with intent. And the one thing, if I'm going to pick up on now and listen to like Lawrence, Adam and Lee, is I think it's a difference in viewpoint from the coaches on what they view either the session or your week. So like my week, I feel is set up with certain things around it, like Lawrence's. I feel like with Lee, like it's the actual content within the session that's set up. So there's aerobic elements around the fast swimming, if you know what I mean. So I think it's a lot more around the outlook, and I think looking at the individual in front of you. Like, I've softened like mad, because if I'm quite frank, the kids down south are absolute goddamn pussies. But also I'm going to say sort of like my levels of expectation have come down in regards to, I asked for these guys to come in 5 times a week, and it's a 5 key sessions or what I view as key sessions a week. Outside of that, if they want to be better, they come in and do more. If they want to just stay where they are, their choice. And it's a culture thing as well, I feel. And I feel with Lee, whenever I talk to Lee, like, I remember, I think it was Arena League, where you boys just had like they were like pumping the chest and going for it. Like, it was like proper man stuff. And remember, nipples go a bit hard. I was like, where the fuck? Like, I didn't have that. Like, I had nothing like that for my kids. Like, there was no sort of. So yeah, I'm going off on a tangent. You're gonna have to start telling me to shut up.
Yeah, well, just should we make a rule for now? Like a raise the hand means that's enough. That's enough, pal.
Someone
Put on mute.
Oh yeah, he's the host, isn't he? Yeah, he's still on host. We can't mute him. That's worrying. Right, guys. With regards to our second topic, we looked at freestyle technique. What, as a coach, are you looking for? What makes a good freestyle swimmer in terms of all the weapons, as it were, and favourite drills? Does anyone fancy leading on this one?
I'll go. I don't mind. I mentioned earlier, I've got a list of 60 drills on all 4 different strokes. The basis of my front crawl drills that I use is focused around shark spin. So body position kicking drills with a number of different movements. So first being side on kicking, then side on kicking with a shark spin, then side on kicking with a shark spin, introducing rotation. Basically a progression drill around a shark spin position. I like to use a lot of snorkels when I do front crawl drills. I like to use paddles with older swimmers because I think it helps get their hands into a better position underwater. In general, I would say I use a lot of equipment. I don't know about you guys. I use a lot of equipment when I'm working front crawl drills. And I suppose I touched on it earlier as well. How do I build that back into full stroke, or how do I build that back into a program? My Tuesday and my Thursday mornings are going through those in 50s at a time, one at a time, where there's quite a lot of influence from me, quite a lot of feedback, and then from there it's put into a small set. So, for example, 2100s with 125 within each 100, focusing on one of those drills. So the aerobic, the stress from the aerobic work is put on top of those drills, because ultimately my view, from very first starting coaching, is anybody can swim a drill or swim a length of front crawl perfectly with 0 stress. So from swimming one length to the other and resting for a minute, most people can do that. Can you achieve that after 375 meters pushing off the last wall in a 400 medley? That's where it gets difficult, right? So as much as it's really important to get the point across to the swimmer that this is how it should look, this is what we're looking for when we're swimming front crawl, this is where I want your hand position, this is what I want you to do underwater, it also needs to be put under some stress, and I'm sure you guys may do that slightly differently in how you create that stress, but yeah.
Lars, when you say shark spin, do you mean like a tight angle around the shoulder and the elbow? Is that? So
this is. So suppose this is. I would start this right from 9 and 10 years old. So basically, almost quite a firm wrist, straight hand, and then the fingers touching the hip, kicking side on with a snorkel, and then the progression from that would be shark spin 1, which is a hold for 6 kicks and 1 arm recovery over onto the other side. And then the progression to shark spin 2 is a hold for 6, extend back down straight, so your arms flat by your side, and then 3 strokes onto the other side. And I suppose with the shark spin 2, I'm looking at the reason we're going back down to straight is because we're trying to emphasize the finish point on front crawl. So then the view with the 3 strokes in between is that they're trying to make sure that they're extending almost like a tricep extension when they finish out the back of the stroke. And then obviously they go up into the shark spin position. We then really exaggerate that by going back down. This is where we finish, and then 3 strokes, making sure they're finishing in that position every time. So for me, those shark swim positions, you're focusing on rotation when they're adding in the strokes in between. What position we want the arm in the recovery phase, and then extension, making sure they're getting the last 5%, making sure they're finishing hand past the hip, I suppose. And that's I suppose that's the foundation of most of the drills that we do. And there are other drills out there that we use, but I would say right from the early stages in, you know, when kids are joining the program and we're trying to get front crawl to look like front crawl, I find those drills really help.
Great stuff. I'm just. Oh.
What about you, Lee?
Right. Well, one thing we do differently, particularly for me, I try and avoid a narrow angle at the shoulder, a small angle at the shoulder. For me, you know, things like your zip drill, all that sort of touching shoulder, touching head, all of those ones that everyone did as a kid, I think it just puts stress on the joint. And I mean, we had James Guy come over last year, and he still swims as much as he does it very well. He makes it work. He still swims like Uncle Mike taught him when he was 10 at Trafford. Do you know what I mean? And he's still doing zip drills. He's still touching. And I said, look, what I'm trying to do here is trying to open up. So go with a high hand recovery, you know, so taking the hands high. For me, what that does, it promotes rotation. It opens the shoulder joint up. So it limits the amount of stress that I can't even demonstrate a zip drill without me rotate a cuff. Do you know what I mean? I look at those principles being a kind of a higher rotation. For me, a higher recovery along with the rotation limits the amount of pressure goes on the shoulder. I still think, for me, what's important is what happens under the water. And I think that idea of getting into that catch point and then making it a straight line as possible. I have a few sort of coaching points which every Ironman swimmer is, whether it be a triathlete, whether it be a 9-year-old, whether it be a Commonwealth athlete, and it's swim downhill. Okay, that idea of pushing the head forward, really going for a neutral spine, and really trying to swim as tall as we can. Do you know what I mean? Really trying to lengthen the spine. We do a lot of snorkel work to promote that around that rotation, but trying to stay as, like you say, as long as possible in that respect. We talk about the high recovery. We talk about that idea of like that tricep extension at the back of the pull phase, and I try and tell our swimmers that I want the push, the underwater section of the freestyle, if you will. The push finishes 6 inches out of the water at the back. Doesn't go. You're not pushing to the surface. You're pushing 6 inches past that, because if we push to the surface, the last 3 or 4 inches are wasted.
So we do a shovel drill. I don't know if you do that, Lee, for that exercise. We call it front crawl shovel.
Okay.
Which is exactly that. You're exaggerating the speed in which your hand breaks the surface of the water to try and effectively shovel the water. It's obviously an exaggerated pull, and I'll usually do that with paddles, snorkel, fins, so that there's a little bit more power there to exaggerate it. But
paddles
really
are great. Paddles are great for that. Definitely. For me, the body position, particularly that swimming downhill idea, that keeping them really flat while still working that rotation seems to be doing a lot for us in terms of speed. But yeah, like you say, I spend a lot of time trying to promote the high recovery, trying to promote the idea of injury prevention as well.
Hand or the elbow, Lee?
Sorry?
When you say high recovery, you're talking about the elbow position or the hand position?
No, the hand.
Hand.
The hand. And it's a soft, it's not a straight arm, but it's a soft bent arm, if you like, or a soft. You won't see Ironman swimmers here. They're always in that position.
That's an Australian model, right? That's an Australian thing. They call it rainbow front crawl, right?
Well, I've not heard that. When I started using it, I went on. I don't want to sound like I'm just dropping names here, but I went on a British coaches conference way back now. It was while I was at Salford, and Ernie McGlisco was speaking on it, and it was and he talked about this octane freestyle that Gary Hall Senior now talks about, and he said the angles at which, so if you're swimming a 400, the angle of the hand's going to come round and kind of quite close to the water, relatively relaxed. The 200 gets a bit higher, and then the 100's there, the 50's right over the top. The 50's as straight as arm as you can make it. And I just thought, you know what, that works. Because it's like an angle from straight up in the air. That's your 50 pace, that's your 100 pace, 200's down here, and 400, and the distance guys do go a little bit closer. But I understand what the problem with that is. If they've got a straight arm and they're going wide, it's going to create a bit of swing. But I'm not coaching a huge amount of 400, 800, 15 guys. So we don't tend, that's the focus of the program. We don't tend to have to worry about those guys. They're still using a more bent arm than probably I'd like, than probably I'm trying to promote. But again, it's individuals, and sometimes it's a case of, you know, what works. Yeah. You know, there's guys that are doing that, and you're like, sorry, Loz, there's guys that are doing that, and you're like, well, it's not pretty. But if I try and change that, is it going to affect his rhythm? Is it going to slow him down? And if the answer is yeah, say, you know, I've said to some of our coaches, you're going to have to leave him alone. Just let him do it.
I've done that myself. Literally asked them to change something, and within 25 meters, forget that, because you can just see straight away. I think there is value in perseverance if you want to try and you really believe that that's the way that you want to go. But I think for me, again, what do I want from a freestyler? And it sounds like I'm winging it. I use my eyes to see what suits them rhythmically. Look at them in terms of the body position. Look at the kind of power to body, weight ratio. Where their strengths are and where their weaknesses are as well. I think everything that we consider is going to be right for the individual and what they can do. I've seen Gallop freestyle, bent arm, high elbow recovery, 3/4 freestyle, straight arm. I think there's so many different kind of styles or hybrids. I've seen somebody do like Gallop on one arm or straight arm on the other, then bent on the other, and it works. And again, breathing styles, which side did they breathe on? I mean, me personally, I look at the leg kick. I look at the side that they breathe on, and look at for any pause or dead spots within that kick. First, I want to try and eradicate that dead spot. But if it's really difficult and it puts a pause in the stroke, then I'll look at changing breathing patterns and breathing styles. And there's loads and loads. I'm sure we could talk for hours and hours in terms of the intricacies of freestyle swimming. But going back to that's really what I look at the individual and what they can and can't do, and try and improve the things that they're not very good at, and strengthen, and work towards the strengths as well. But in terms of drills, very similar to Lawrence, I kind of change my drills as I go throughout the season and depending on the intensity. So again, early position, I'll look at body position, so kick, rotations, shark fin. But again, I don't really try and get it tight. Sometimes I just let it loose, let the elbow come up rather than keeping it tight to the side. And then I do go through the propulsive phase, introducing fins, snorkels, and look at kind of looking at that underwater phase, slow, medium to fast in the pathway, accelerating at the back end. But again, you have words that you look at. So the words that my guys will always hear are kind of fingertips down, elbow higher than your wrist, and keep your armpit open. 3 simple things that they can kind of look at you doing and then try and think about that and reinforce that. And then obviously you can integrate that into, head up, fist, single arm, different drills that can kind of get the outcome that you want at different points throughout the season. So I try and mix it up for variety purposes for them, but also think about what I'm trying to achieve in the other sessions that I'm trying to do.
I think what you said there, Lee, about angle. I think the shark fin drills allow that, because your touch point. I know you talked about touching, hold the shoulder, head, nose, twist your ear, whatever the old school drills were. I think the shark's fin drill means that the touch point is the hip, so you tend to stay a little bit wider. You don't get as tight up. With your hands in your armpit. Which is why I like it, and it does promote more of a rainbow action round the side to keep stress off the shoulders. That's what I was trying to say earlier. I think the reason it's perhaps seen as an Australian way of doing things is they've got a history of long distance swimming, Thorpe, Hackett. I think that's perhaps why it's seen that way, that they recover more around the side with a lower elbow rather than a higher elbow, and less stress on the shoulders. But I suppose that's the way I'm looking for. I've got a question for you, Lee. What are you looking for in terms of drills? What are you looking for under the water, or what drills do you have under the water when you're trying to get? I know you mentioned you're trying to get from A to B as quick as possible. Do you have any drills that promote that?
I do a lot of sculling. We do sculling with paddles. We do kind of quarter catch. Just initially, just popping that wrist and just getting into that very front end of the catch points. Then we'll go like four rounds quarter catch, 4 rounds half catch. So the half of the pull, and breaking the pull down into sections. We do a lot of that sort of work. But I think under the water, I like them to. Sorry, let me get my words right. I like them to focus on the idea that they're trying to fix their hand as high up the pool as possible, and then they're trying to pull themselves past. If you were to take a photo of like a time lapse photo, it would almost be the hand stays there, and it's just the body moves past it as we go through. And I love that was from that McGlisco meeting that I sat in on. And it was like, and it was, I don't know who it was. I think it was Thorpe or Van den Hoogen band or someone like that at the time. And he showed where this vertical elbow to hand line, and he showed like 6 slides, and it was almost exactly the same position until it needed to open out to push, and that blew my mind. And before that, I can't even remember what I was thinking before that, because that changed so much how I felt about what was happening under the water. I was like, how has nobody put it so simply before? But we do lots of paddle work in that respect. I actually do every now and again, if we've got time and sort of we're in one of the sessions that we're sort of playing at it, I get a volunteer at one end and the other end, and use like a lifeguard's rescue rope and hold it kind of 18 inches under the water, and I get them to go through, get hold of it with their, sorry, I can't demonstrate here, but get hold of the rope between the thumb and forefinger and actually pull themselves along on the rope. Like the backstroke drill where you pull the lane rope. And well, it's not a drill, it's just cheating. But that's because I'm a backstroker, and I'm always going to say that. But we use that with a line sort of, I'd say about 18 inches under the water, but it's really useful. I think it helps when you've got a shallow end, because trying to do that whilst treading water becomes hard work. Or if you could actually attach it to something under the water, that would be perfect. But yeah, I'm all about that promotion of fixing the catch and pulling past it.
Trying to create an anchor point, aren't you, under the water?
Yeah.
You basically, your body, you're anchoring your hand and your wrist and your elbow and your armpit, and your body's moving over the top of it, like you just said in the pictures that you saw.
Yeah,
I agree with that theory. An anchor point.
My terminology, and I'm sure you can get on board with this one, Lee, is trying to explain exactly what you've just gone through, is that their arm is going over the top of a beer keg, over the top of a barrel. So the reason for that is they can almost visualize a big barrel. As you create your catch position, they can visualize a big barrel there. And then the idea is that you're going to pull the whole, so this net of water that you've caught, this big barrel, you're then going to move the whole barrel all the way through, and your hand's going to stay ahead of the barrel the whole time. Is kind of the way that I explain it. I think that comes across quite well. And the other thing you mentioned about, is it body past hand, or is it hand past body, is the other one. You know, the hand goes in, the body moves past the hand, not the other way around. The hand doesn't come past the body, because then you aren't holding any water.
I like that, Loz. That's a good
What's
way
the
of
brand
putting
of, what's the brand of the barrel?
What's that?
What's the brand of barrel?
Heineken.
Heine, bit of Heine.
Noel, have you got anything to add on that?
I think from my point of view, and I try and get through to Summers, is sort of like, I do little to no drill work, if I'm honest with you. I've got a standard drill progression I go through. We do a lot more skull work with paddles. I don't like using snorkels. We barely ever use snorkels, because I think the breathing and getting the kids to learn how to breathe either like goes in with the rhythm of the stroke. And you can have early breathers or late, and all that sort of shit. And I think you should be doing breathing with the stroke all the time. Personally, I really do. I think you should be trying to recreate what you're trying to do in the pool, ultimately in the competition pool in a race.
Can I challenge that, Noel, just for a minute, and I hope that you can answer it. If you had a swimmer that was struggling in body position and the timing of the breath, or it was disrupting what you were trying to get them to do under the surface of the water, then why would you continue to do it that way? Have you had any success?
Right. So
that makes sense. If you're trying to work on the anchor point and the breathing and their elbow starts coming across the line, how do you then?
So my thought process on freestyle, particularly, is sort of like ultimate, like sort of like efficiency is hand never moves from the position it enters in, does it? Like exit and entry point is the exact same place, and it's the hand staying still, body moving forwards, like we said. I base my entire session, when we start a session, we start streamline kicking immediately, moving into body rotation and build up again, regardless of whatever we're going into. I just feel like that's really important to start every session from scratch, if that makes sense. So I never ever get in and go, right, we're just going to go 300 loosen up, It's always 825 streamline kick, 825s then to rotational kick, adding in skull work. So we tend to go, so just going on with myself now, is like my progression through would be sideline kick into a sort of single hand skull, where we work through with the kids. Like there's 3 phases to your underwater phase. Is there's a catch, there's a press, and there's a propulsive phase. And ultimately what we're trying to do is turn liquid state into solid matter. You're trying to get as much pressure from the levers to apply that onto that propulsive phase, so you can get more distance if you're cutting or anything, all that sort of crap. I feel the drills you do on top of the water or with your arm stroke needs to be rhythmical, and I feel it needs to be through a count, if that makes sense. So we always go on to something. So I would go like a catch into long dog sculling, but we'll go something just called 3 tap, and it's literal just 1 tap at the back, 1 tap around about the head. The last tap is that switch on the front end, just so you're getting that timing in. And we're always trying to get them to breathe on the 1. Does that make sense? So whenever we work through a progression, we'll go skull into clockwork, which is just straight arm. So it's just 1, 2, switch fast. And the focus to rotate onto the side is that. So we always tell them to keep the chin in alignment with the sternum as a rotate. And then we just repeat that same thing again. And then all we do from there is just start adding in like sort of like, and again, for me, going back to Lee's point, is that I don't particularly give a shit about the recovery. Well, not to the point where I'm trying to look for like swimming porn, should we say. Like it's like, oh my God, look at that high elbow recovery. It looks so good. Couldn't care less. If it's effective for the swimmer, however they get from point 1 at the back here to point 2 is down to the swimmer and their flexibility and their range and their mobility. So the whole breathing effort thing for me is to take away the snorkel and to be constantly working that 3. Do that 3 count we work on the stroke. So it's always 1 past the hip. We're looking for that flick past you on the propulsive phase. So they're not pushing and keeping the hand in the water, they're pushing backwards. I want to see the hand high. And then on 2, obviously, from however you go from 1 to 2 is up to you. And then on the 3, I'm looking for the snap. I'm looking for the quick exchange between the 2 hands. So it's linking in, and that's where we're looking for the breathing. I do tend to encourage breathing every 2, if I'm honest with you, but we'll always breathe to the same side of the pull. So they might breathe to the right on the way down, breathe to the left on the way back up. And I feel it's just getting the equilateral movement and getting that rhythm in place. Does that make sense? Like in regards to how I view it.
Can I ask a question here, lads? And it's something that I do a lot of talking about during the week, and then it's completely gone out my head when we were talking, when I told you about my thoughts on freestyle. Breathing both sides or one side. It's quite a simple thing, but people have very strong views on either way. For me, and Noel, I'll back it on that, mate. For me, breathing every 2 provides them with much more oxygen. Anything over 200 meters, I want to see the athletes breathing every 2, because it means they're getting a lot more oxygen on. It's an aerobic event. The longer they can stay oxygenated, we're prolonging the opportunity before they start producing lactate, before they're going to start hurting, before they start going to blowing up. And if that might be 50 meters difference. I don't know the science on it. But for me, having more oxygen in the system is an absolute no-brainer. So, okay, I'd like them to be able to breathe both sides, because I don't want to see someone get smashed on the second to last 50 because they've only breathed one way, and the guy next to them. We've all seen that happen. You know, that kid gets battered because he weren't breathing the right way, and the fella next to him saw his chance and gone for it. But for me, it's all about getting more oxygen on board over the middle distance, the distance events. What do you guys think?
Honestly, I think we're fucking land animals, aren't we? Like, we are land animals, and we're trying to recreate what we do when we walk around in the pool. And I think I never do, and I never ever do like breathing patterns in the pool where we like go breathe every 3, every 5, every 7, every 8, or any of that sort of stuff, because I just don't feel it's productive to what I'm trying to coach or what I'm trying to get forwards. I'm just trying to keep them a regular breathing pattern. I keep saying to him, sort of like, for me, the rhythm of your swim comes from the breathing and what you do here. As soon as you start panicking about breathing, that's where they start changing the breathing pattern. That's where they start getting stroke degradation. That's where they start having a breakdown in the efficiency, simply because of the breathing. I'm trying to alleviate as much stresses as possible in that pool. And the first and foremost, I think, needs to be addressed, and always has to be addressed, even from the bottom end, is the breathing pattern and the timing of the stroke, to make that a more natural movement. So if I can get them to breathe in and out, breathe in and out, and this came from a couple of years ago when I had a backstroker who literally didn't know how they were fucking breathing on backstroke. And it's not something I ever even thought about, if I'm quite honest with you. Like, and it's not, because you've got to face out of the water and they're just going. And I was watching them during a race, and I was like, why are they dying in the last like 25 meters? Like of 100, it's fucking, they're only moving for like a minute. And he was literally holding his breath, moving into that turn. And then I'm expecting him to kick out to the 15. He kicks out, but he's like popping up, and he's just going, and then going back into that holding breath again and trying to slam himself down the pool. He's working anaerobically from the second he was on, particularly on backstroke. I do believe like it's quite an anaerobic stroke because of how long we expect him to spend under the water. So I ended up doing a hell of a lot of breathing stuff with him, like just breathing exercises, even just on backstroke. And then that's taken me into doing a lot of backstroke recovery work and getting to focus from that underwater into, right, relax into your breakout, take your time into the turn, and then work and all that sort of crap. But I just feel the fundamentals is of any stroke you do is down to the breathing. If you ain't breathing properly, you ain't swimming properly. And if you try and increase the stresses on top of that, ultimately back end of the race, you're fucked. Sorry.
I think you've
So,
got to look at the individualistic characteristics of the swimmer that you've got in front of you. So I've had swimmers breathing every 3, I've had swimmers breathing every 2, and I've changed it. I've adapted it. And again, you can talk about different examples for different people, given a different circumstance. So for me, I agree that breathing on one side, not necessarily every 2. If I've got a sprinter breathing every 2, I don't want that. So again, it just depends on the distances that they're doing, and I'm sure the other coaches would agree. But yeah, if they're doing a 50 or 100, I'd try and get them to breathe on one side. I think generally it minimalizes that dead spot in the kick that I spoke about earlier. They'll have a stronger side than the other. I also think that it increases stroke rate for a number, not all, but I do think it increases stroke rate. And again, rhythmically, that will work better. And again, off the back of that, and then I've tried to adapt for argument's sake on 100. I've tried many different ways, breathing every 2 down the first 25, breathing every 4 down the first 25, and then dropping onto 4-2-2, or, the last 25 going every 4s. Again, it's just playing around with the swimmer that you've potentially got in front of you. And what we'll find out what works for them. And I've had distance guys that have generally breathed 3s, again, rhythmically and for balance purposes. Because the race is a little bit longer, I find it more effective generally to breathe, bilaterally. But there have been occasions where they breathe on one side. But again, that's because of their inability to breathe on the opposite side. So again, it's just down to the swimmer that I think for me, breathe every 2, especially, or breathe on one side if you are racing short distances. I think you get away with it a little bit more, and I think it can aid rhythm and balance the longer the distance goes. So again, I just look at the swimmer, and we work on that in training and practice different things. Get what you're doing your critical speed set. So I had Emma. Right, Emma, you're going to breathe every 2. You're going to breathe every 4. You're going to breathe every 8, every 10, whatever it might be. You're going to breathe on 20, you're going to breathe on 30, you're going to breathe on 40. That evolves the race plan as well off a freestyle event. So again, just play around with it for me, and get to know what you might have something in your head, but you have to adapt that ideology relative to the swimmer that you've got in front of you.
Sure.
I'm definitely a breathe every 2, whenever possible. Breathe every 2, regardless of what set they're doing. Obviously, speed work, we're trying to minimize breathing as much as possible. The two occasions where that will change, the first one is if we're pulling. So if we're pulling with paddles on, I have them breathe either every 3 or every 5, just because chances are they're putting more power into the pull, and I feel that minimizes injuries. If they're breathing to one side with paddles on, I tend to feel that brings problems with shoulders. If they're breathing to the same side with paddles on, it's not even. And then the second reason they wouldn't breathe every 2 is hypoxic work. So if we're doing a breath holding set, my Monday night pull sets, we do a lot of breath holding work, breath holding in and out of turns, and we may go 100 breathe every 3, 100 breathe every 5, 100 breathe every 7, for that type of set. But to be honest, for the rest of the week, unless it's pull work or it's breath holding work, I'm trying to get, as you mentioned, Lee, as much oxygen in as possible. I'm trying to minimize the pause in between breath 1 and breath 2. It's pretty straightforward, my view on it.
I like what you're saying there, Loz, about the paddles, and actually that makes a lot more sense. To be honest, I've never really thought of it like that. One thing in terms of oxygen, we do quite a lot of, probably because I was a backstroke. I used to do all of my aerobic work on backstroke. It was billed as the Hungarian model when I was swimming 100 years ago. But I went through a phase of using like 50-50 split free and back. And apart from the ones that were shit at backstroke and were complaining like mad because I ate backstroke or whatever, actually it really helped with recovery work, because, like you say, loading the oxygen seemed to have a real positive effect. But lads, there's been some really, really good stuff in there. And I know I'm just wary on time, and we don't want to complete it this week because we want to have something to talk about next time. But I think going forward, I think if we'll maybe set up like a WhatsApp chat group for these coaches that have been invited. So if anyone wants to throw any input in either on the session we've just done, or maybe look at what we can do, what we can cover next time, if they've got any requests on can you cover this or that, or whatever it might be. And it doesn't have to be just the same old, I'm keen to explore stuff which people don't talk about. And that's what's been great today. Nobody talks about aerobic swimming because it's bread and butter. It's stuff that we just do because we do it, because we've always done it. Do you know what I mean? But actually, when was the last time we don't talk much about swimming anyway. It's normally a load of rubbish. But to actually talk about the real basic stuff that we don't give enough thought to. And I'm coming out of here like, wow, there's so much stuff that I'm going to be thinking about. Yeah, I can work that into my program now that I wouldn't have been thinking about otherwise. So yeah, I think that's been really useful. And I hope everybody that's been on the call, I've had a couple of apologies. People have had to go to their next meetings and what have you. I think if we say, if we looked at next time, if we say we'll keep it to an hour and a half top end, and people know what to expect, I think nobody wants to listen to us talk for more than an hour and a half. But I think that's been a really useful session, guys. So thank you all very much.
Can I ask a question of Adam?
Yeah.
Before, when we were talking about the aerobic work, you said that you work the females harder. I just wanted to know why.
Generally, and again, it would depend on menstrual cycles. Generally, I would back off in those kind of where the energy levels are not going to be at the same, and the recovery is just not where it should be or where you ideally want it to be. But in terms of body mass and weight, generally, which is a taboo subject to have one-on-one. Generally, I think it's something that we try as male coaches to try and avoid, but we do need to have them, I think, but in sensitive inquiries. But yeah, generally, I think the females will be able to work a lot harder for a lot longer than the males. Again, science baffles me a little bit, but I find that I can push them a lot more, and their zones are a lot lower than what the males generally. But again, I have had female sprinters that I wouldn't even do that with. I would just totally back off. What I would call an aerobic monster, I would work them a lot harder, because for me they're more capable of doing that. Not in all cases, but again, just maybe.
Do you find that there's more females that are more long distance swimmers than males, and that's why obviously I understand the weight issue, but obviously females are more likely to carry more body fat and have issues around weight, which is a touchy subject because nobody wants to have any youngsters worrying about weight. But do you find with females being able to work for longer periods, being more slow twitch, that you have them more of a distance athlete? Or
I think it's both. I've had the last season I did in Salford, I had more boys than girls. That the boys could do more than some of the girls, because so I had quite taller, more muscular females, and I had to kind of look at them slightly differently and look after their aerobic conditioning would be probably a lot less, because they were less able to kind of do that work. They were working a lot harder when we were doing that. But the girls that could, I would put them in with the boys and probably challenge them more than those boys that they were doing the same set with. So again, I try and just look at the swimmers that I've got in front of me. I think, what can they do? And I'll do something with them. And it might be a certain cycle, I think, that didn't really quite work as well as I thought it would. And then I'll adapt and change, and kind of 1 week I'll be putting them there, and then the next week I'll be putting them somewhere slightly differently. And again, there's no science to it for me, other than just looking at them on a daily basis, you look at, I mean, all the, you know, I know you do a lot of coaching as well. You look at them in the eye, and you know what they've got left in them, and where they can go in that given session, or what they produced the session before. You think, you know what, I need to back off them here, because last time I did that, this was the outcome, and you know, it took them a week or 2 weeks to come out of that cycle. But yeah, as a generalistic kind of comment, yeah, I would probably work the girls generally a lot harder. But again, that was probably more to do with the distance-based athletes that I've come into contact with, that I know that I can get what I can get out of them. And then again, the girls that I know I just don't touch anywhere near the same kind of level. So yeah, probably wasn't clear when I made that comment.
I 100% agree. I just think girls can tolerate more. I think when it really comes down to it, they're tougher. I think from a muscle mass point of view, they've obviously got less, so recovery is quicker. Less muscle mass means they're going to recover quicker. And if you look at ultra marathon running, which would be like, I suppose, the most extreme version of distance that you can get. If you look at anything up to 100 miles, the males win everything. So they don't have male and female age categories. It's just everyone in together. Once you go beyond 100 miles, girls win by like over an hour. So the 200-mile ultramarathon races, the females are winning by over an hour. And it's almost, I find it really interesting, but there's almost a point where the male has a cutoff, has a limit, and females can go beyond that. There's a Joe Rogan podcast where they have Courtney Dollwater, I think she's called. So she's one of the best ultramarathon athletes in the world. She competes in 100-mile plus races, and she beats all the guys by 45, 50, 60 minutes in these races. And they talk about the concept of childbirth and the fact that females are set up for more intense physical pain. And as a result of that, when it comes down to the business end of workouts, they can tolerate more pain than males can. I find it really interesting. It's a good interview. You should watch it. It's on you can get it on YouTube, I think. But
I think that's quite interesting. That is the fact. Like for me, it's all mentality, innit? And I feel females do develop a lot earlier, obviously, like physically, but mentally as well. They're a little bit, they tend to think they're a little bit more mature. You're fucking not, your arsehole still. But like they are a little bit more mature. They can see the rationale behind what they're doing. Whereas with lads, like you're just trying to keep them in the sport till about 15, 16. And then I find there's just this switch with them. They just switch on and they're just easier to coach. But with females, like I find they're a lot easier to coach from like the age of 12 up to 15, 16. And their understanding and their rationale of why they're doing what they do is you get a better intent out of what you're asking of them, if that makes sense. Like if I ask some of my boys to go and do 4100s, just be like, you just be like, And whereas if you do the same set with the girls, they'll go out and they hold and they just go for it. And I think mentality, and it's something that Bert just said to us the other week. We spend so much time trying to make this prize horse, don't we? Like this fucking amazing like thing that can run at the Grand National, but you don't think about the jockey sticking on top of it. You're not going to stick a dumbass like dipshit on top of an amazing horse that can win everything. Like still up there, you've got to be working and looking at and assessing and knowing your athlete and knowing your swimmers and knowing what they can mentally manage, not just physically, but mentally. There's some kids we can look at and we know they are built for the sport, but upstairs, it ain't happening. It's just not going to work. And the psychological side of it, I think with girls, you've got to look into a lot earlier. With the lads, I think that comes later on. And I think it's the pack mentality and their maturity that comes into it. And I think again, for me, it's just outlook. For me, like your coaching perspective, where you're coming from, what you're looking at, then changes the reason why you apply or you prescribe what you're doing. Yeah, sorry.
Right.
Thank you.
Right, guys, shall we wrap that up there? And then, like I say, we'll set up a WhatsApp group so we can feedback a little bit, discuss or what have you. I know there's a few people who have had to leave, and there's a few that will probably hear about this and want to join next time. But yeah, let's have a chat in through the week. We'll aim for the same time next week, and let's see what new we can come up with to go at, because I think that's been really, really useful. Thank you all for your input. Awesome. Okay,
Cheers,
guys.
See you later.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.